Hi, everyone. It is so nice to be in Budapest, in our former home, I guess. So I'm very, very happy to present this recent work that I've been conducting with Azzurra Ruggeri on deliberate ignorance in children and adults. So, what is deliberate ignorance? I will start off with an example that I think we more or less all can relate with. So if I want to watch Star Wars Episode 3, I probably would not want to see something like that beforehand. And one of these reasons is that despite the fact that this information is okay, but not particularly important or anything, it would definitely spoil the whole point of watching the movie. And somewhat also another relatable thing, in some social situation, maybe we would prefer to be shielded from certain information. We don't need to know everything. And deliberate ignorance so can be defined as this conscious and willful choice not to seek information, and was particularly interesting because information in general should improve our decision making in principle. This phenomenon is very pervasive in social, non-social context, and related to positive and negative emotion. Okay, I'm one click behind. So why are humans so often neglecting potentially relevant information? Giger, Renzer, Herwig, and many other scholars have been trying to work on this and provided a taxonomy, sort of a tentative taxonomy of what are the uses of deliberate ignorance. For instance, ignorance can be used as an emotion regulation device, such as in the example that we saw before with the unfollowing people on social network. It can be used as a strategic device, for instance, when we want to avoid to know information that would make us behave otherwise, so we want to somewhat eschew responsibility over these consequences that our action may bring about. There are several other devices that can be used in different ways that maybe I will not focus today. There are some empirical findings that are supporting this idea. For instance, participants were found to avoid costless information about environmental harm, and they were also found in economic games to pay a cost not to know about the consequences of their choices when such choices were optimal for them. And also they were found to avoid relevant information in moral dilemmas when such information is consequential. So this set of studies was suggested that ignorance can be used and is used as a strategic device by people. And there are also studies that link ignorance to, or deliberate ignorance to emotion regulation purposes. For instance, people were found to refuse to test for diseases when they are in a high-risk group, or even refusing to pick up the results of the test they already were doing when the risk of a contagious was high. Also, older adults were found to seeking for ignorance more frequently compared to younger adults, and this seems to be potentially linked to emotional regulation improvement with age. Also, preference for ignorance was found to be higher, to increase when scenario foster emotions and personal involvement. What about development? So there is not much going on in the field, at least as far as I know, although there are some exceptions. Brocas and Carillo were tested strategic ignorance in children in a design very similar to the Dana et al. Design, and they found a general lower preference for ignorance in kids compared to adults. Also, a colleague of mine tomorrow will present a poster, so let me advertise a little bit. The efficiency of information search strategies can be influenced by the social context, so the motivation behind the information search can lead to different strategy and different level of efficiency. Is this going to the point that children would avoid to know altogether? Would children manifest a similar rational approach to ignorance? And if so, at what age would they start to manipulate their information space for strategic purposes rather than emotion regulation purposes? We decided to explore this topic and try to investigate children's preference to avoid potentially relevant but also negative information, and tearing apart also factors that are influencing such preferences. So we conducted 3 studies, but basically one study on different age groups. The studies were implementing on Qualtrics, on tablets, and they were in Italian language. The first study targeted 8 to 14 years old children, and we conducted the study in schools. The second study targeted adolescents and adults between 14 and 55 years old. We recruited them online. And the third study targeted 4 to 8 years old children, so a younger age range. And we tested this in summer camps and beach resorts, which was nice. And the protocol is very, very simple. So we presented some stories on a tablet to children, and except the adults that they saw these things online, but we presented a study, stories in which a social scenario was depicted with the occurrences of a critical negative episode. Participants were asked to imagine to be the main character of these stories, and this critical negative episode would also always happen in their absence. So this is an example of a cover story. You and your friend are playing with your favorite toy. You have to leave the scene for this and that reason. When you come back, it turns out that the toy is broken. So we manipulate 2 elements, the friend element and the toy element. So we manipulate the relationship between the main character, the participant, and the potential wrongdoer. And we manipulated the value of the item at stake. The value of the item in stake implemented the information value, so we compared the high value condition with the low value condition, and the relationship manipulation included situations in which social stakes might be higher, such as in a friendship situation. We also had other 2 conditions, authority and dominance, in which social costs are also high, but with a more fear of confrontational aspect, and we compare this with the baseline of a stranger relationship. We also had age as a predictor. So what we asked to participants. First, we ask a very vague general question, a preference for knowledge when knowledge comes for free. So do you want to know if your friend broke your toy? Then we asked what we called an emotional ignorance question. So the epistemic action is already framed as more costly. Would you ask someone if your friend broke your toy if your friend were not there and would never know? In here, we made explicit that there would not be, at least not an explicit social confrontation coming out of this, as indeed the friend would not know about the fact that you took this epistemic action. So we aim to trigger and isolate only emotional regulation goals. Those children who answered, and participants who answered yes, were also exposed to strategic ignorance question, which is basically the same, but with the difference that in this case, the epistemic action is made mutually known. And in this case, we aim to trigger more the strategic purpose of avoiding potential social conflict and confrontation with the wrongdoer. So I'm presenting the results in here. So our hypothesis is that information value would foster information search, and therefore participants should be generally more motivated to know in the high value compared to the low value condition. And this is what we found. So children, in this case children, but that will count also for adults, would prefer to ignore the information significantly more often in the low value condition. In the y-axis here is the mean proportion of knowledge choice, so a higher bar would indicate a decision of knowing, and the lower bar a decision to ignore more frequently. So we can see that children in here prefer to know more often in the high value condition. The pattern was the same, although the rates were a bit lower with adults. But it was not like we didn't find the same pattern with younger children. This may be due to the fact that they are not sensitive to this information, or maybe they don't recognize the value of the item at all. So we are now trying to tear apart this potential confound. But all in all, it seems that there is a high preference for knowing in general when the information comes for free. There is also, I had to mention that anyway this effect is pretty consistent across all measure and all study. I decided to show you this because it's the clearer pattern. With regards to the emotional ignorance question, we reason that if children and adults ignore information for emotion regulation purposes, then they should be more likely to choose to ignore the information in the friend condition, because it's in the friend if the friend is the wrongdoer, this would lead to higher disappointment, or at least we hope to trigger such consideration. But it seems that we managed. So across all the age range, the friendship in the friendship condition, participant prefer to know less frequently than in baseline. We also found a positive effect of dominance of knowledge choice, which it's not super surprising, but we didn't expect that. I failed to mention that we implemented dominance here differently in the different scenarios because, of course, of the different age range that we had. But the character was always described to be a mildly aggressive person that you don't want to hang out with, and you want to avoid. And with regards to authority, we found an effect only in the second study that was led mainly by the by the adolescents. Otherwise, we did not find any effect. The authority was implemented as an adult in the children case, a teacher in the case of adolescents, and as a boss in the case of the adult participant. All in all, it seems that the preference for knowing is lower when the epistemic action is more concrete. What about the strategic ignorance question? So what about situations in which, in which we ask participants, would you want to know if the wrongdoer is actually present, and this act of knowing may lead to social confrontation? So if this purpose is grounding the decision of ignoring the information, then participants should be more likely to choose to ignore the information in the dominance and in authority condition. And this is somewhat what happens, but it doesn't happen only in those conditions. It happens across all conditions. And in fact, the negative effect of friendships on knowledge choice is still emerges. Preference for knowing becomes even lower when the epistemic action is mutually known, but we didn't found exactly the pattern that we expected with this question. So to conclude, our studies can show that adults are more inclined to ignore information than teens, as was suggested by Hertwig and colleagues, but we did not find developmental differences within studies. Although it seems that the younger children in study 3, between 4 and 8 years old, were less likely to ignore information compared to older children and to teens and adults, in particular when ignorance would have a strategic goal. Also, children's deliberate decision to ignore potentially unpleasant information are modulated by information value and by the frame that we propose. And despite some spurious findings, the pattern of results seems overall consistent, suggesting that maybe this may be a scalable protocol to be used in different type of settings. So this is a first explorative contribution on whether children approaches lack of information search rationally. So I would like to thank you, my colleagues, mainly Azzurra Ruggeri and the iSearch group in Italy, in Vienna, in Munich, everywhere, and Ralph Hertwig for a nice conversation, and the schools and the partners in Italy who made this happen so quickly, and you all for the attention.
Thanks, Francesca. Very interesting talk. I was wondering about your adult group, and in particular whether there were any differences. I mean, it's a very wide age range, and I think some people might say people between 14 and maybe up to 20 are adolescents still. Did you find any difference there? Was there any difference between the younger and the older participants?
Yes, thank you. We did. I think I might have even some slides. Yeah, so because the age range was so wide, and we had like a lot of adolescents and less maybe adults, we divided the sample in two groups, in the teens and adolescents, and we did find a difference between these two groups, a main effect of age, with adolescents being more likely to know compared to adults, except in this authority condition, which is something that maybe will be worth discussing. But yeah, we did find this effect. In general, it seems that from the descriptive data that we have, that we can see that the adults are more likely to ignore compared to the children that we tested in the other two studies, but we cannot compare across study because of the different way in which we administer the task. But it seems to be there seems to be an effect, and confirms also the findings that are already there in the literature from Ralph Hertwig.
Okay, there are no more questions. Thank you again, Francesca.
Thank you.